don't know how to act, you can go to jail.
I did kill Kenyatta Band. But I want you to tell it like it is if you gonna tell it.
From a defendant being dragged out of court, to an attorney flipping off opposing counsel, to a murderer scaring a judge, the courtroom can be a place for some wild, unexpected moments. We're going to break down some of these outrageous episodes with the man who knows the ins and outs of court, the founder of Law&Crime, Dan Abrams. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, clearly, if you follow us here at Sidebar, you know there's no shortage of outrageous courtroom moments. They happen all the time across this country. And that is what we're going to dive into right now. Some of the most wild courtroom incidents from recent years. Now, who better to break all this down with me than the man who has been following what has been happening inside of courtrooms for years. He is the chief legal correspondent for ABC News, host of On Patrol Live on Reels, Dan Abrams Live on News Nation, Court Cam, Taking the Stand, both on A&E, SiriusXM's The Dan Abrams Show, and the founder of Law&Crime. I think you can guess who I'm talking about. Dan Abrams joins us right now. Dan, good to see you.
And the man who fills in for me when I'm having to do two things at once.
I'm trying to be, Dan Abrams 2.0, so it's good.
Yeah.
This is your first time on the set, right?
It's my first time sitting on the set.
What do you think?
It's amazing.
It's like
lights and looks beautiful.
It's like my Merv Griffin era.
Yeah, I'm happy that all that money. I look at the set in a different way.
Right. Yeah. This better be worth it.
Exactly.
Now, before we get started, so as I said, you've been covering cases your entire career. Are you ever still shocked by what you see happen in courtrooms?
I mean, look, if you're not, you should stop doing it. Seriously. I mean, if it doesn't have an impact still, then you shouldn't be covering trials because, this is real life. People's lives are so impacted by this stuff. And if it's not impacting you as you're covering it, as you're watching it, then you're jaded. Then you should probably be doing something else. So absolutely.
I'll tell you what, I'm glad you said that because everything I'm about to play for you is the first time I've ever seen it in a courtroom. So we're going to start this off in Detroit, Michigan. This is where 26-year-old Amanda Casal is about to be sentenced for killing Jerome Zerker while drunk driving. She pled guilty to operating a car under the influence. She's about to be sentenced. And by the way, just to give you a human component of this, Jerome left behind 5 children, a fiance, his family. It is such a sad case. And as Jerome's sister is speaking to Judge Kiana Lillard about her brother, this is during a victim impact statement, apparently Casal's mother, Donna, and some other unidentified man were smiling and laughing in the back of the courtroom, which is, as you can imagine, a big no-no with the judge. Watch.
It's time for him to go. And I don't know who he is, but whoever can sit here at a tragic moment like this and laugh and smile when somebody has lost a family member. I mean, the entire time that Mr. Zerker's sister was speaking, that clown, and that's what I'm going to call him, a clown, was sitting there smiling and laughing. Yeah, you can go too. Because if you don't know how to act, you can go to jail. So leave. Anybody that can sit there and laugh and smirk when somebody, take her, she's going in the back. She's going in the back. Anybody else want to go? You can go too. This is a court of law. And these are very serious matters. And I understand you all are upset because your loved one is going to prison. But guess what? She's going to prison for the choices that she made. Ma'am, you are being taken into custody for criminal contempt. Your disruptive and disrespectful behavior disrupted today's proceedings, and you, ma'am, are going to the Wayne County Jail for 93 days for direct criminal contempt. Anybody else want to go? Try it. Try it. Oh, my mouth? Well, thank you. Your mouth got you 93 days.
So what happened? Well, Donna Casal, she was held in criminal contempt by the judge, and she was originally ordered to spend 93 days in jail, but the next morning, she offered a tearful apology to the judge, saying, "I deeply apologize for what I did. I was under a lot of stress." And Judge Lillard amended the sentence to just 1 day, credit for time served. She was released. As for Amanda Casal, she was sentenced to 3 to 15 years in prison. She was paroled in 2020. I talk about things I've never seen before. That I haven't seen before.
Yeah, and this is a story that we covered on Court Cam on A&E. And, it is, it doesn't happen that often that a judge will step in and literally hold people in contempt for misbehaving by smiling or laughing, etc. But here the next day she was very different, and that's what led the judge to have a little bit of a leniency here.
Now, of course, if you disrupt courtroom proceedings, it could be contempt of court.
Right.
There's a lot of emotions, especially for the family of a defendant too, right? They could say, we didn't mean to be laughing, but it's those kinds of moments where you can blame them, but you also can't blame them for how they feel in certain circumstances.
Well, look, again, when it's a family member who is the defendant, right, and there's anger about the sentence or whatever the case may be, you can understand, but there's also, it's not an option to lash out in court. That's why I have lawyers.
Yep.
That's why I have decorum in court. It's to make sure that the proceedings are dealt with, particularly sensitive proceedings, in an organized, controlled manner. And if you have people in the courtroom who are laughing or in any way mocking the proceeding, particularly when you have victim impact statements. I mean, a lot of what we see on court cam are victim impact statements, right? And it's not just the victim impact statements, it's also the way other people react. It's always interesting to see how the defendant reacts, but this goes back to what we were talking about before, which is you have to be able to put yourself in the position as much as one can. I mean, you can't obviously feel what they're feeling, but you have to be able to understand this person just lost a loved one, or more than one loved one. And when they're making that statement, boy, there better be a level of respect in the courtroom for that.
Yeah, and I think the judge said everything the right way and handled everything the right way. You talked about decorum. That leads me now to Tampa, Florida. We go to June 2021. So Ronnie ONeal III is on trial for what is an absolutely horrific crime, beating and shooting to death his girlfriend, 33-year-old Kenyatta Barron, killing their 9-year-old special needs daughter to death with a hatchet. Her name was Renivia. And then he stabbed their 8-year-old son, Ronnie ONeal IV, and set their home on fire. Now, miraculously, that young boy survived, and get this, one of the investigators in this case actually ended up adopting him. So now he goes to trial. And what happened? Well, he decided to act as his own attorney, standby counsel present. And we've seen that before. But what I tell you I haven't seen before is the way he presented to the jury.
The evidence is going to show that we are under some of the most vicious, lying, fabricating, fictitious government you ever seen. By the time it's all said and done, you will see who is the mass murderers. In Tampa Bay. I did kill Kenyatta Barron. But I want you to tell it like it is if you're going to tell it. Because if you think I'm here to play around with y'all, no.
All right, Mr. ONeal, please stop using swearing language. It's not appropriate in a closing argument.
Almost feels like he's doing an impression of an attorney when he saw on TV.
Yeah, he watched way too many videos. He got his degree at U of Tube University, right? Watching too many videos, etc.
Yeah.
And is in essence making a mockery of the proceeding. And again, critical to think about the fact, the victims here, and this kind of performance can't make them feel any better.
And talking about the victim, so he seemed to allude to the fact that he attacked Kenyatta to defend the kids, that he was acting in self-defense. He also claimed that law enforcement fabricated evidence, that they manipulated recorded 911 phone calls to make it sound like he was beating his ex-girlfriend. He accused police of removing evidence as well. And then he had an opportunity, again, never saw this before, his own attorney, he cross-examined his own son, the one that he was accused of stabbing, the only surviving victim of what happened. This boy was 11 when this trial took place.
Did I hurt you that night of this incident?
Yes.
I did. And how did I hurt you?
You stabbed me.
Do you remember telling Detective Dirks? After he asked, did your dad hurt you the night that he hurt your sister? And you said, no, he didn't hurt me. Do you remember that?
No.
That was something.
This one I remember when this happened. I was covering it at the time. Really hard to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Dad who's cross-examining his son, who he stabbed, and trying to catch him in inconsistencies. Kid's now 11, right? He was 8 or 9 at the time. It's just the worst of the worst.
And he was trying to suggest that, well, you were adopted by police, so now they're telling you what to say, as if all the other evidence doesn't matter. And again, I've seen actually a defendant cross-examine somebody he's allegedly, hurt, like an ex-wife, but this, a young boy, I've never seen anything like it.
Right, his own son.
Yeah.
I mean, that I've never seen. I mean, I've seen a number of cases where when people represent themselves, right?
Yeah. Never a good idea.
Generally a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Right? Generally a terrible idea. Every once in a while, somehow, but generally it's a terrible idea. But yeah, I've seen a number of cases where the defendant represents himself. It's almost, I was going to say him or herself. I don't remember a woman. It's almost all men who end up representing themselves. And cross-examining the victims.
Right.
And the answer is like, yeah, when you shot me, I was this and this and this.
Yeah.
And when you shot me, it's not smart.
No, and as you can imagine what happened here, the jury found Ronnie ONeal III guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated child abuse, arson, resisting a law enforcement officer, and just 2 days later he was sentenced to 3 life sentences plus an additional 90 years. The judge calling this the worst case she had ever seen in her 19-year career.
Hey there, everybody. So I want to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this episode of Sidebar. Always love talking about them. Now, here is the incredible thing about Morgan & Morgan, and one of the reasons why I like talking about them so much.
Hey, say something about our big wins.
You're not supposed to come on camera. The reason Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm, is so big, and I'm sure you can guess it, is because they win a lot. And that's
Don't forget huge verdicts.
Yeah, they've won big verdicts, $6.8 million in New York, $26 million in Philadelphia. You see, the thing about them is they don't settle for lowball insurance offers from insurance companies, which is something.
Mention that you can submit a claim from your couch at home and on your phone.
Dan, they've completely modernized the process by submitting your claim, talking to your legal team. It's all done straight from your smartphone. Again, that's something
With
that
8 clicks or less.
8 clicks or less. Yes. You can see if you have a case in just a few minutes.
Hey, 1,000 lawyers. We have over 1,000 lawyers.
All right. You know what, Dan? If you really think you can do better, maybe you should just do it yourself.
What Jesse was getting at is if you've ever been injured in an accident, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. You can submit a claim in 8 clicks or less. To start your claim, just visit forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar.
You came a little too close to me. It hurt me a little bit. I'm probably actually going to have to hire you guys now, but that was well said. That was well said.
Well, now we're going to head over to Cincinnati, Ohio, where former judge Tracy Hunter, she was convicted back in 2014 of unlawful interest in a public contract. This was for her handing over confidential materials to her brother so that he could keep his job as a juvenile court employee. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, but she hadn't served it yet. The imposition of the sentence was delayed for years because attorneys were raising a number of legal challenges. She still lost her job. Her license to practice law was suspended. But now, for what we're about to get into, we're in court in 2019 where her attorney is asking her sentence to continue to be delayed. And I want you to keep in mind that this courtroom is packed with her supporters. And by the way, Hunter's supporters had arguably sent intimidating letters to the judge in this case, Judge Patrick Dinkelacker's home, asking that Hunter be exonerated. Now the judge, he ultimately imposes the 6-month sentence on Hunter, clearly not being deterred by Hunter's defenders. And that is when the courtroom erupts into chaos. Someone rushes towards Hunter, and then Hunter appears to go limp and emotionless as she's literally dragged out of the courtroom by a court officer.
Mr. and Ms. Deputies can take her away.
So I talk about unexpected. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I mean, look, this goes back to the justice system has to treat people as equally as it can. It doesn't always treat people equally, right? There's no such thing as complete parity in the law. But, you know, just because someone had a high-level position, just because she has defenders, doesn't mean that when sentence is imposed, she doesn't have to serve it.
Right. And you know, they were talking about she was the first democratically elected juvenile court judge. She was going to make change, but she was, you know, convicted of a crime here. And have you ever seen in a courtroom somebody, you know, when a sentence comes down or even when a verdict comes down, they react in a certain way? I don't think I've ever seen them go limp and being dragged.
You know, here's the problem with answering the question, have I ever seen? Right?
Because you probably have.
Because with Court Cam,
yeah,
now in its whatever 6th, 7th season,
yeah,
I've seen everything. I've seen just about everything, including this clip. And so, you know, it's unusual, certainly, to see it. But, you know, I have seen, on occasion, people who don't want to cooperate with police, and they are dragged out. You know, it's just the fact that this is, you know, a former judge makes it a little bit different.
And they talked about certain mental health issues she had, and obviously maybe her body went limp, you know, hearing that. It was a wild scene.
Well, I think she was just doing it. I don't.
You think it was active? Like
yeah. Well, I think she just was active resistance.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think she was just refusing to cooperate and being pulled away.
Yeah, because people were yelling like you're dragging her like an animal, and no justice, no peace. That's interesting. She ended up only serving 3 months in jail as opposed to 6 months. She was released early. But now I'm going to go to somebody else. And this is somebody that we know very well. We cover this a lot. Because when I think about absolutely unforgettable, outrageous moments in court, can we talk about Alex Jones for a second? And honestly, I couldn't pick one here because there were so many. Now this, of course, is when the InfoWars founder and host was sued by the families of those who lost loved ones in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, as well as a former FBI agent, for comments that he made regarding the massacre, namely that it was staged and fake and a hoax, and the parents were crisis actors, you know, just insane stuff to say. And they sued him under various legal theories, such as defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, Alex Jones, he actually lost these cases by default judgment. The court automatically ruled against him because he willfully failed to comply with discovery obligations during the course of this case. So the trials that we covered on Law and Crime and Sidebar, they were purely about how much would he owe the plaintiffs in damages? How much would he have to pay up? There were 2 cases, one in Texas, one in Connecticut. And like I said, I don't know what the most outrageous moment was. Was it when his attorney, Andino Reynal, seemingly flipped off opposing counsel in court?
Will you talk to me? Andino, will you talk to me? Will you talk to me? Will you talk to me? When you stood in that hallway, you said to me, are all your videos
I said
on
this is a summary exhibit, and we're agreeing to
Hey
all
guys,
of it.
hey guys, maybe now's not the time. Maybe we can cool off and y'all can have a phone call later.
Neither the judge nor the jury were around to see that one. They were around for this, though.
That's Robbie Parker, isn't it, Mr. Jones?
It is.
That's the real Robbie Parker, isn't it?
I mean, I said years ago I thought Senegal had him. Just like all the Iraqis, but you liberals kill and love. It's just, you're unbelievable. You switch on emotions on and off when you want. It's just ambulance chasing.
Why don't you show a little respect? You have families in this courtroom here that lost children, sisters, wives, moms.
Is this a struggle session? Are we in China? I've already said I'm sorry hundreds of times, and I'm done saying I'm sorry. But I legitimately thought it might have been staged, and I stand by that, and I don't apologize for it.
And don't apologize, Mr. Jones. Please don't apologize.
No, I've already apologized to the parents over and over again.
We know
I don't apologize to you.
Objection,
Don't apologize to you.
And one more, this is my personal favorite, Jones being questioned by the judge in Texas about chewing gum.
Spit your gum out, Mr. Jones.
It's not gum.
What is it? Because you're not allowed food or gum of any kind in the courtroom.
I had my tooth pulled a week and a half ago, and I had some gauze in there earlier, and it's been causing me to have some pain.
So you're chewing on your gauze?
Would you like me to show you?
No, I
Right
just
here?
want you to answer my question.
No, I was massaging the hole in my mouth with my tongue. I'll show you right here. Here.
I don't want to see
Right.
the inside of your mouth.
Oh no, there's no gum.
Dan, take your pick.
Well, you know, I remember when I was covering the O.J. Simpson case, there was a rule in the courtroom of no gum. Absolutely no gum. But you were allowed to bring in sucking candy.
Mm-hmm.
And before I went into court one day, someone gave me a chiclet, which is, you know, these things that are start as a candy and become gum. And I didn't know. Or at least this is what I told the judge when I got caught on camera chewing a piece of gum in court. And the camera, you know, he had his own, Judge Ito had his own camera where he would look at the audience. And he brings me into his chambers and shows a picture of me sitting there going like this. And, you know, serious stuff then. And my defense was that when I got it, it was a candy.
Right.
And it was legit.
Yeah.
And Alex Jones did a version of that in his defense. Look, this was an insane case throughout the proceedings, in part because responsibility had already been determined, and it was just about the amount of money. But the level of, you know, acrimony between the lawyers. I mean, yes, you see cases where lawyers can go at it and really hate each other. This was definitely one of those cases. But Alex Jones is, you know, a big personality, and he kept that up in court. And in the end, it didn't help him legally. I don't know if he cared about the legal result, because if he cared about the legal result, you would have done things differently.
Speaking of that, by the way, so in a latest development, remember, he was ordered to pay almost $50 million in one trial and almost $1 billion plus $473 million in punitive damages in the Connecticut trial. And most recently, a judge ordered that Jones's personal assets have to be liquidated to pay off the judgment, but not the company, Free Speech Systems, that owns InfoWars. They can still go after the company, just not in bankruptcy court. It could still be sold to pay it off by a court-appointed trustee. But now that they can go after his personal assets, do you think any of those plaintiffs are going to see any of that money?
Yeah, I think they'll see some of it. Yeah. The question will be how much, right? I think that they are convinced that he's hiding assets. They're going to have to try to find them, but they'll get some amount of it. They're certainly not going to get the full judgment here.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to finish this off. One last case. I would be remiss if I talk about this, because there's an argument that we may not have seen as many insane moments in a courtroom as we did in the next one I'm about to talk about. And this is a very tragic case. Let me be clear about this. I'm talking about the trial of Derell Brooks Jr. This was the guy who drove a red SUV through the Waukesha, Wisconsin holiday parade, killing 6 people, injuring several others. This was back in November of 2021. He goes on trial in 2022, represents himself. He identifies, by the way, as a sovereign citizen. This is a movement of people who seem to believe that the law and the courts don't have authority over them. And he ended up taking out his anger out on the judge and the prosecutors.
I'm a grown man with grown kids. Ain't nobody gonna talk to me like that. Nobody. I don't have a problem with doing what you ask me to do, not tell me.
You can see that he is seated with his back to the court or to the camera. He took his shirt off as well. I'm also told that he is threatening to throw and break items.
I would like to provide the defendant and the court with a copy.
So that had to be said. So it's the defendant.
That's not how it was said.
That was how it said. You want to run the record back?
Mr. Brooks.
So I'm the only one. I got one
Brooks.
ear that work, and I heard that.
This is to benefit you so that you
not.
understand
Ain't none of
your
this to benefit
witness
me, so let's
has
be clear
a prior
about that.
record. One more interruption and you're going to be removed to the next courtroom.
That's what you want to do anyway.
Via OWI second from 1997.
Right, I need to take a break. This man right now is having a stare down with me. It's very disrespectful. He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared.
Talk about making a mockery of the court system.
And this judge had enormous patience for this guy, if I recall correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, covering this story too and thinking, why is the judge still allowing him to engage in this? So this judge was, very willing to let him have his say as much as possible to protect the record, et cetera, and he abused it. He just abused the opportunity and the patience of the judge.
Because she wanted to give him every opportunity. You want to represent yourself? Sure.
Right.
I'm not going to kick you out of the courtroom, so that he didn't have an issue, either him or his attorneys have an issue on appeal that he didn't get a fair trial, because she knew what was at stake with a case like this.
Absolutely. And really did let him do a lot of things that, other judges might not have. I'm not criticizing her. I'm just saying that she had enormous amounts of patience for him.
And by the way, real quick, you cover a lot of sovereign citizens on your shows.
I find the sovereign citizens to be so somewhat amusing, right? Yeah. Because they cite all sorts of nonsensical laws. Well, we're not driving, I'm traveling. Okay. And you don't have you don't have authority over me because I am a member of some particular nation, etc. And it literally they've seen this stuff online, right? And someone is in videos telling them, okay, so when you get pulled over, here's what you say, right? Yeah. And it's gonna get they're gonna have to say, hey. It's just all gobbledygook nonsense that they're basically suggesting that they don't have to abide by the same laws that everyone else has to abide by. And we see them a lot on Patrol Live, on Reels, and certainly a lot on Court Cam, on A&E.
Well, clearly they're not watching your shows.
Yes,
they're not
exactly.
watching Sidebar because they would know, because what happened to him, Derell Brooks Jr., he was convicted of over 70 crimes, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. He was sentenced to 6 life sentences, plus over 700 years in prison, and I can't think of more.
Right. I mean, most of these sovereign citizen cases that we're covering are not murder, right?
Correct.
To be clear. I'm talking about people who are just pulled over on traffic violations, et cetera. This is a different level. So, Dan, we can make this show 7 hours, but unfortunately you're a busy man. Wanted to do a little selection for you. Thank you so much for coming on. I am a huge Sidebar fan.
Thank you.
So I am thrilled to be able to actually appear on Sidebar with Jesse Weber.
Did you hear that, America? Did you hear that?
Yes.
Dan Abrams is a fan. Dan, good to see you. Thanks
good to
so
see
much.
you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you. That's all we have for you right now, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.